Ladies and gentlemen, we welcome you live to episode number 30 of the Primetime Rundown right here on the Eastern Observer and the Blackjack Media Networks. We do have to apologize for missing last week's scheduled show, but because the three of us had a little bit of a power issue, we couldn't get that to you. So we are here, we are safe, and we are ready to go on hockey night, if you will. Alongside my man, Nick Partain, I'm Joey Jarzynka. We'd like to welcome in our special guest once again, Ian Schraier, Assistant Director of Athletic Communications at Adelphi University. Ian, welcome back, my friend. It has been it was a fun time last time when we had our good friend Dennis Bernstein on, and now it's going to be the three of us again.
No, I'm happy to be back. Happy you guys asked me to come back, and happy to do it.
Of course, absolutely. Nick, how are things with you?
Yeah, same old. I mean, last week we were basically the Columbus Blue Jackets. Just had trouble on our power play. It's fine. We're ready now. It's okay. No, we got this.
Oh, man, that's fantastic. So, ladies and gentlemen, for those that are just tuning in for the first time, we really do appreciate it. We are also on, for the first time, we were just saying just off camera, we are on Periscope for the first time in this show's 30-episode existence. So please, if you are on Twitter, at Observe Eastern, please give us a follow. Please give us a retweet, all of the above. That would be fantastic. I see Nick just did it. I just did it. Ian's going to do it in a quick second. So I thank you, fellas. This is a new project that we're going to try out here and see if it works for us. So to try and get the viewership boosted. So, fellas, let's get into this. We're not going to be on all the way until 8 o'clock because there is a team that's still in play here that I know really is, about 66.6% of us here we are fans of. And unfortunately, Ian, you do have something to be clapping for and cheering for. So it's not all hope is not lost. Alexis Lafreniere to the New York Rangers, most likely. The New York Rangers won the draft lottery. Something that was maybe a little heavy, if you will. That was the second time that he had to pick that ball up. But hey, listen, draft lottery winners, the New York Rangers. Listen, this is something pretty cool, I have to say. The Rangers winning the first overall pick in I don't even know how many years. It's been a long time.
1965, Joey. 1965.
Okay, well, there you go. You see, and there goes all my research. That's it, folks. We are done for the night. So, fellas, Alexis Lafreniere, we're going to start with this because we do have a lot of New York Rangers fans in the area. Obviously, we are in New York. Not something we want to speak about right away, but we got to get to it. Listen, it was 12.5% chance for the Minnesota Wild, the Toronto Maple Leafs, the Winnipeg Jets, the Edmonton Oilers, the Pittsburgh Penguins, the New York Rangers. I think I might be forgetting one more.
Nashville,
and the Nashville Predators as well. But the Rangers came away with it. Tyler Adele did say right away. He said it's almost a lock for the Rangers to be the number one overall. And as you can see right now, our first overall selection predictions really did not work out well for me, Nick, or Rob DeLuca. But let's hear it from a New York Rangers fan, Ian Schraier. Your thoughts on the New York Rangers most likely having a solid third-line center to start next year?
Well, can we start by getting rid of the whole conversation that this draft lottery was rigged? Look, I mean, I think I texted you, Joey, after the lottery or a day or two later, and I said, if this thing was going to be rigged, I feel like it would have gone to Toronto or Pittsburgh. I mean, it feels like in Pittsburgh that they're ushering the Sidney Crosby era out, and how convenient would it be that the next number one draft pick would go after they're ushering the Crosby era out? And then for the Toronto Maple Leafs, among all their scoring power, 4 years ago, you get Austin Matthews, you add Tavares, Marner, Nylander, you add all these players onto it. Let's throw Lafreniere in there. So the best part about the whole draft lottery was the fact that the guy from Ernst & Young dropped the Rangers ball before he put it in. I mean, that's what made it so great. It's like, oh, well, we've got no shot at the number one pick. But look, I mean, I didn't expect the Rangers ball to come up. They've certainly gotten lucky the last 2 years with respect to Kako getting the number 2 overall last year and now pulling out the number 1 overall this year, which appears to be Lafreniere. I mean, listen, it seems like the Rangers rebuild. All the chips are falling where they have to right now for the New York Rangers with respect to this rebuild. 3 years ago, Jeff Gordon came out with that letter to the New York fan base and said, listen, we're not going to win for a few years, and we hope you guys understand that. And the best part was, I think it was 2 years ago where they got off to a real nice start. They won a great game at home against Montreal, and they ripped off some 6 or 7 game losing streak afterwards and says, we're upset about it. Well, didn't you let the year before tell us that you're rebuilding and you're not going to win? So everything seems to be falling in the right place for this team. Obviously, with the addition of Lafreniere, it's going to bolster the top 2 lines. I mean, you could say right now if Lafreniere and Kako pan out, that arguably they have one of the best top 2 lines in all of hockey. They still need to address that 3rd and 4th line. That's what we're hoping to see in the offseason, where they really need to bring in a couple of veteran players. They might be trading some guys off. We'll see what happens. But right now, I mean, as a Ranger fan, you got to be thrilled. The rebuild is going exactly how you want it to, if not better at this point.
I have to bring this up here, and this is something that actually raised my eyebrows. And I know Nick always sits there very nonchalant until he's told to speak. But now I have to ask you this, Nick. When Ian just said that there is a slight chance that they could have the best 2 lines in hockey, as an Islanders fan and just as a hockey fan in general, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, just off the top of my head, obviously Pittsburgh has a competitive argument there. Colorado has a competitive argument there. But when you look at the Rangers, the one thing that they don't have is the center spot as strong as those 2 teams might. So that's where the first way we'd look when you're making a comparison like that. But I also want to quickly mention, how is Lafreniere playing in the top 6 when Panarin and Kreider are both left wings? Somebody might have to play on the off wing if you want to stack it like that. I think at least at first they're going to put Lafreniere on the 3rd line and even things out. But it's an actual question. The Rangers just gave Kreider all this money. They didn't truly think they'd win the lottery. So now they have 3 elite left wings, and they're going to have to figure out how to play them. Maybe Kreider can move over, but it's dicey playing wings on the wrong side because of their handedness. I feel like Panarin, being the least defensive of the trio, might be best off to move over, but he's an MVP candidate. Do you want to mess with that? So we'll have to see how that goes. If they bring Strome back, they're not as strong down the middle as those other teams, but you're right. If your top 4 wings are Kako, Kreider, Panarin, and Lafreniere, the centers aren't even that big a deal, and then Zibanejad's a stud, so even if Strome is okay, that's a very strong top 6. But the joke I had to get out that I didn't have a perfect spot for is, as an Islanders fan, you just got to laugh, right? I mean, stuff happens. But you know what? The Rangers just talk about how they didn't win the lottery since 1965, which is right. But you won the number 2 pick last year coming from nowhere. Stop playing the pity card. You just got a big win. You signed the best free agent the year before, and you didn't even offer him the most money. Things have been going your way just fine. Don't act like you needed this lottery win.
Are we still being salty about Panarin right now, Nick? Is that what's going on?
I'm just saying, like, you were fortunate to get him. Don't act like you went out there and blew the world away like the Yankees did with Garrett Cole. That wasn't exactly a surprise. We knew they'd pay him the most money. And listen, I still love Panarin, and the Islanders have done just fine without him. Of course, I'd love to have him, but it's not like that made or broke anything.
Well, yeah, and you know what? Obviously, you brought up the fact about the Islanders here. We'll give you a little sneak peek. It's what we're going to speak about later. So, there's obviously a lot of good things to talk about with the New York Rangers, and as I look at the numbers here, we had about the moment I said about the New York Rangers, we went from lots of viewers to about 0. But we'll still continue talking about him anyway. Alexis Lafreniere, he won gold in, I believe it was 2019 or last year's World Juniors. He played 5 games. He had 10 total points, 4 goals, 6 assists. In this shortened season, 52 games played, 35 goals, 77 assists, and 112 total points to be the consensus number 1 overall pick. They're also comparing him to Sidney Crosby as well. There was something also, fellas, that was spoken about by ESPN, and lately they've been dropping the ball in terms of certain comparisons. First, we heard Damian Lillard compared to Kyrie Irving. Then we also heard not too long ago, I just took a screenshot of this on my phone. Should the New York Rangers trade the number 1 overall pick in the 2020 NHL draft? Now, I'm going to ask the two of you this, and is that something that is, or actually, no, I'm going to ask Ian this first because you're a journalist. You're an SID. Is this something that you would fire someone for because of something potentially so?
You know what, Joey? I'm going to say it's not impossible. The name that really keeps getting linked to the Rangers right now is Jack Eichel. I know a lot of it is Twitter discussion. I mean, there's really, I know Eichel wants out of Buffalo. Everybody's saying that the Rangers are the best fit. He played for David Quinn. So, I mean, are the dominoes lining up the right way? Sure, but I mean, what's it going to cost to get him? I don't think that they're going to be that willing to part with the number 1 overall, but I'm not saying it's completely impossible. The Buffalo's going to ask for that number 1 pick if the Rangers come to the Sabres and say, we want Jack Eichel. What do you want in return? I don't think that they're going to say that the number 1 that the Rangers are getting from Carolina is going to suffice to be the draft pick that they want back.
Yeah, I'd have to agree there. And that's actually the first time I heard Jack Eichel and New York Rangers in the same sentence. Now, that would be something, especially when he has a $9 million cap hit. That would be something. And in just a few years, when they have to pay Capo Caco, if he begins to explode, if there's no bridge deal or if there's no long-term extension where there would be restricted free agency afterwards, no arbitration or anything, that could be a little bit worrisome if they were to make that deal because they do have a lot of money on the cap right now. And on top of it, too, there's a lot of buyout problems, too.
Well, remember, Joey, that whether or not Lundqvist retires and the Rangers retain that $8 million in 2 years, you're going to have Brendan Smith, Mark Stahl, and Henrik Lundqvist. If they all play through their contracts, you've got about $15-16 million coming off the books. Now, like you said, you do have to pay Kakko. You are going to have to pay those guys right now that are so young that the Rangers really don't have to worry about paying right now. But that $15-16 million of relief can be exactly what the Rangers need.
Yeah. Actually, one other one, Ian, you're missing. Kevin Shattenkirk's $6 million buyout cap hit is this next season's, and then after that, it's only like $1 million for 2 years. So that's another $5 million that gets dropped off on top of all that. So yeah, they have plenty of flexibility coming up, but one more year of pain is coming.
Yeah. Kevin Shattenkirk, Ryan Spooner, Dan Girardi still continues to haunt the New York Rangers to this day. All three of those equal $7,494,444. You see, Nick, you can't
blame those guys for retiring to Florida.
Listen, I was just talking about my math skills.
I know. I'm just saying though. You know what, Shattenkirk and who was the other one? Girardi. They retired to Florida. That's what happens when you get open to live in New York, right?
Well, what did they call Tampa Bay at one point?
Rangers South. Rangers South.
Yeah, exactly. They eventually go from New York to Florida. Fellas, let's get into the team that won their qualifying round in 4 total games. The New York Islanders taking on the Florida Panthers, but a little more recently, if you will, they came back and scored 4 unanswered goals against the Washington Capitals on Wednesday night and took out the Caps 4-2. But also, there was also something here that was considered predatory. We will get to that in just a second, but we'll show you a video clip first of that predatory hit.
Pollock and Pelech against this trio here. They're going to really key on Alex Ovechkin, much like they did the Barkov line in the Florida Panther qualifying series.
So now with us seeing that again, and for our viewers seeing that as well, the Islanders came back to win 4-2, mainly in 5-on-5 play. TJ Oshie scored 2 power play goals to start the game off, and the Islanders had all the answers following a Jordan Eberle goal to end the second period. That was the start of their momentum swing. They did not look back, and Braden Holtby, along with the whole Washington Capitals team, looked completely disheveled. After watching that video, I want to hear this from Nick first. We look at that hit, and then we remember, because we were at the game together when Lubomir Wisnowski was his career was effectively completed at that time off of a Tom Wilson hit. What are your thoughts on this retaliation, if you will, that we are most likely going to see within an hour and 45 minutes?
Okay, so to go through the hit, Lee clearly interferes with him. It's clearly a penalty. It's not a great hit. Like, I still kind of see why Capitals are mad. Like, I don't know why he lowered his shoulder into him. Like, I think he was bracing, but every time I watch it, I still think Lee kind of went a little bit out of his way to hit him. I think he was aiming for contact a little bit. But to say it's a dirty or a predatory hit, no. He hit him right in the chest. Lee's barely moving, and there's an unfortunate injury for Backstrom. He has concussion history. He hit his head on the ice, but guys get hit all the time. I don't see how it would have been different if there was a puck there. Like, it would have been a fine hit if there was a puck there. I get that it was interference and it's a penalty, but I don't think it was a dirty hit. He didn't go out of his way to malice him. No elbow came up. It was pure shoulder right into his chest, and it was interference. It was called and it was done with. Not to mention, Lee answered the bell. He fought Carlson right there. He didn't run away from it. He owned up to it. And then even when Tom Wilson came at him later in the game, he owned up to it and he fought it. So I don't know why there should be more retaliation. He already paid his dues. Tom Wilson beat him up pretty good. He gave him what he deserved for having a bad hit on one of their better players. It should be over with. I don't know why the Capitals are still complaining. People on Twitter whining he should be suspended. Department of Player Safety looked at it. They saw nothing wrong, just like I do. It wasn't a dirty hit. It was a bad hit. You don't want to see it. It was a penalty. They scored, I believe, on that power play. So I don't know why they're still mad. It's over and done with. Focus on the fact that your team got run out of the building in the third period.
Ian, your thoughts as an outsider?
I think my thoughts about the game as a whole was for the full 60 minutes, it seemed like that the Islanders weren't seeing the same team that they saw in Florida, where in the qualifying series, it seemed like a game that was built more on speed, played more to the Islanders' advantage. Because the Islanders like to create. They like to create off turnovers. They like to forecheck, create off the odd man rushes. And I would say for the first 35 minutes of the game, it was the complete opposite of that. The Capitals were aggressive. The Capitals were dominating the boards. They were physical. And the Islanders really had no answer for it. The game, to me, changed when Pajot came up just short on the shorthanded attempt. And from there, you had the Eberle goal that cut it to 2-1. You know, you turned off the game, you turned it back on, started the second period, it's 2-2. And for the Islanders, everything changed from that point. I mean, you look at the stats, Washington was held without a shot to one shot on goal. Excuse me, not a shot, but one shot on goal for 14 minutes. From I think it was like the 15:06 mark to the 52-second mark of the third period. It just shows how dominant the Islanders were in that third period to be that resilient, down 2-0, and really not playing that well for the first 35 minutes of the game. You could see how pumped up Eberle got after the goal to make it 2-1. You could see momentum was starting to shift, and sometimes you need that goal right at the end of the period to take you into the third. It worked to the Islanders' favor, and we saw how it did. I mean, 4 unanswered goals, 3 goals in 8 minutes, dating to the second period. So everything went right for the Islanders for the last 15 to 25 minutes of the game. I know everybody's going to hail Eberle, hail Beauvillier. I mean, these guys have had incredible postseason so far. I really want to compliment the play of Brock Nelson. I mean, it seemed like he was out there for 60 minutes playing both ways. He really looked great on the penalty kill, looked good on the power play, was giving them the opportunities when the rest of the team really wasn't. So kudos to the Islanders for really being resilient, coming back, and doing what they needed to do to be up 1-0 in this series.
Yeah, absolutely. And we look at some of the playoff leader or the leaderboard for the playoffs in terms of statistics, goals, and assists. And there are obviously Sebastian Aho leads the way with 10 goals for the Carolina Hurricanes. Connor McDavid, 9 goals in only 4 games. That's something absolutely ridiculous.
Points?
5 games. 5 games. Sorry?
Points, not goals?
No, 9 goals. That's what that we can credit to NHL.com for. Yep, 9 goals. Credit that to NHL.com. If there's any error to that, please let me know. Anthony Beauvillier, 6 goals.
It's points, you nut.
6 points? Or 9 points?
Aho has 10 points. McDavid has 9. McDavid has 5 goals. Taves has 4 goals.
And also, let's look also on the opposite side as well. The assists, Aho with 7 assists. Patrick Kane with 6 as well. Quinn Hughes with 6 also. Miro Heiskanen, 6 assists, and also Josh Bailey as well. Ian, you brought up about Brock Nelson's play, but also Nick, Anthony Beauvillier and Josh Bailey have really stormed onto the scene here. These two, we obviously have not seen the star yet in Matthew Barzal yet. Is there another level of this team once we see him going?
Well, we saw him going in the last game of the Florida series. He ended them. That was it. He played his best game of that series. It was really the only one he was truly impactful offensively. But I loved his line in the press conference after that Florida game that he went off and they eliminated them. He had the breakaway goal. He had 3 points. He said, even though we weren't scoring, our line didn't allow any goals. And it shows that he's bought into the Trotz mentality. He knows that it's defense first and then let his talent take over when he has the chance in transition, when he has some space. Don't force anything. So even though he's not putting up numbers, as talented as he is, he's playing within the system. And my favorite stat for the Islanders so far is they've played 5 games and allowed 2 5-on-5 goals. 2. Actually, technically it's 3, but one of them was 2 seconds after one of their guys came out of the box. So it's basically still killing a penalty. That's ridiculous. Against 2 really good offensive teams, they've shut everyone down 5-on-5. And I love how Ian brought up Brock Nelson because he's not scoring goals right now, but he's the centerman on their hottest line. That's the line doing all the scoring. Bo and Bailey have had goals now in consecutive games. The whole line has just been humming, and Brock's the one at the center of that. He plays a great two-way game. He was given a lot more responsibility when John Tavares left because he became the de facto number 1 center, and before Barzal really, took that mantle playing 2 ways. But Brock was the one who kind of took that spot early on, and the fact that he's blossomed into a good player that you can rely on at both ends has been great. And Bailey playing defense and finally getting rewarded with a goal. He's had the assists all series. He's made some nice passes. That whole line has been absolutely humming, and it's great.
And I'll tell you, Nick, I haven't given Josh Bailey enough credit either. I mean, I saw a stat that one of my friends tweeted the other day. In his last, I think, 8 playoff wins, Josh Bailey, 4 goals, 6 assists, 10 points, and a +8 rating. I mean, you can't ignore those numbers.
Not only you can't ignore those numbers, it's like I said, it's amazing because we've also seen the play of Jordan Eberle. His play has gone off to a brand new level, and something that we saw when he was in Edmonton, he was invisible in their one playoff series, and we would hear on Twitter when the Islanders signed him to that $5.5 million deal for I think it was like 5 or 6 years in that range. He took not only did he take a pay cut to come here, obviously the years extended that, but in terms of average annual value, he took a pay cut. We've seen a brand new Jordan Eberle into the playoffs, or in the playoffs rather. He's completely bursted onto the scene again, and this is the second year in a row that we have seen him do it. Nick and I saw it firsthand last year at the Coliseum, but now we're seeing it again in Toronto following a 4-month layoff. Really, really good stuff.
Yeah, and the funniest thing I saw, I don't know if it was you who sent me that meme, but it was one about how Edmonton fans feel after he had 0 goals in, I think, 13 playoff games for Edmonton, and then he's had like 10 in 8 games for the Islanders since. Like, come on, it's amazing how much he's leveled up for this team come playoff time. I mean, it helps having Matt Barzal on your line and Anders Lee, who are both playing well on their own right. Lee's a prototypical playoff player. He uses the body, he goes to the front of the net. He's not going to be affected by a rougher playoff type of atmosphere. And Barzal's skill translates easily. So Eberle's always been in a good position to score, but for some reason, once it comes to playoff time, he scores goals at a much higher rate, and we're all here for it. So that has given the Islanders 2 great lines for this playoff so far that are playing well. Pajot's played well on the third line. He's made them literally have 4 lines they can roll at this point. Last year's Islanders were good. They had a great first-round series. They swept Pittsburgh. The third line wasn't great. They were still running out Leo Komarov and Val Filppula on that line. While they rolled it out, it just wasn't great. Pajot changes everything. They're 4 lines deep now. It's incredible to watch this team go at you in so many ways. And I think they're flat out a better team this year. It's really dangerous to see. They could end up actually making noise past this series if they even make it. Like, dare I say, and put my bias out there, but they look like a dangerous team that could end up making an actual run.
Ian, obviously there's no Nick Backstrom tonight because of the hit that we showed earlier. Lars Eller returns and will be the second-line center following, I believe there was his wife gave birth, I believe, if that's what it was, or he was unfit to play. It was one or the other. But regardless, he is back. But obviously, your first line center is not there, and now Lars Eller is back. Big loss with Nick Backstrom. 2 goals, 15 assists when Backstrom is out. It seems as if that his play gets elevated whenever Backstrom's out. He also scored a career high 39 points, 16 goals, 23 assists in 69 games. Your thoughts on what the fans should expect, not only Islanders fans, but Caps fans and the outsider looking in?
I think this game is huge for the Caps in so many ways. Game 1, like I said, for the better part of 25 minutes seemed like it was going to be a game that Washington had handily, and they didn't. And I think it certainly showed. I'm not saying that the loss of Backstrom really changed the game. The Everly goal and the way they played in those final 5 minutes of the second period changed the game as the momentum swung into the third. But with respect to Nick Backstrom, I mean, we can rattle off all those stats. He's a huge loss for the Capitals. I mean, there's no doubt about it. I mean, he's been with that team for, I'm not even sure how many years he's been with the Capitals now, since the beginning. And they need Ovechkin, I think, to play a little bit better. The Capitals, I wasn't really too impressed with him in game 1. I mean, TJ Oshie really stole the show. I'd like to see a little more out of Kuznetsov. But that's all credit to Trotz's defense, and it shows. It shows that they're not going to let Ovechkin beat them. And obviously, I thought Varlamov looked pretty good in game 1. So when it comes right down to it for the Capitals, losing Backstrom is huge. They have enough weapons though to fill there. Are they as deep? Maybe not with losing Backstrom, because Backstrom, you get that veteran presence. You have that kind of player that can score as well as anybody else on the ice. But for the Capitals, at least, they just need to. They have enough guys there to make it work.
It's weird now. We're not going to see Nick Backstrom, and we were talking about earlier about the possible retaliation towards Anders Lee, and we're also probably going to see, even though Nick was saying that it's really said and done. We've seen right away. This is the first time since 2015 that the Islanders have played the Caps in a playoff series. Obviously, the last time the Islanders met them, they lost in 7 total games down at Capital One Arena, and it was a last-second goal let in by Jaro Halak. And with it being difficult to watch, there were some newcomers that had to enter the lineup due to the fact that Lubomir Wisnowski was out. Two players by the names of Adam Pelech and Scott Mayfield, who are both mainstays on this roster right now, and who have elevated their game to no point of return because things have gone really well under the Trotz regime. The reason why I bring that up is because we look at what Tom Wilson has done in the past, and even though he has cleaned up his act, Islanders fans definitely will not forget this play.
Here's Wilson leading the rush. Beagle cutting for the net, so is Kamara, and it's blocked off in front. Great play by Wisnowski. He gets streamrolled by Wilson, who will head back to the penalty box, and now Hickey ties up Wilson.
Well, with that being said, even though, as Nick said, it should be done and over with, a lot of guys on both rosters played in that game and also played in that series. So both teams do not like each other. Are we going to see tonight, or possibly moving forward in this series, a hit like that could be a target on someone's back to try and make a statement because of their loss to Nick Backstrom, or potentially any other fights, any other feelings?
Go ahead, Nick. Let me make this perfectly clear. If you waste time during a playoff series trying to settle a score, you're probably going to lose. So go ahead, Washington. Run around like a bunch of banshees trying to hit us. Let us go up 4 or 5-0. Hit everyone you want. I don't care. These are grown men that can protect themselves. If Tom Wilson throws another hit like that on a star player, he'll probably get thrown out of the league and he'll pay for it. I can't imagine Washington is that stupid that they'd go out of their way to ruin their own chances of winning the series by playing the revenge game. Wait till the next regular season. Fight Lee any chance you get. Do all those things. But if you're going around and throwing bad hits, then you don't deserve to win anyway. So what's the point?
And to look at the Islanders side of it, the Islanders have all the momentum right now. Why? I mean, I understand it's history, and sometimes history has a way of repeating itself so many years down the road. But if I'm the Islanders, I'm up 1-0 right now in the series, and the Islanders have all the momentum. I wouldn't want to do anything to change that right now.
Yeah, a lot of fans were calling out for Ross Johnston, and I laughed every single time. Like, we just dominated the end of a playoff game. Why would you want to make changes? And the guy keeps coming up is take out Leo Komarov, who I don't love. He's not a great player. He's the worst forward they're playing right now, but he's a penalty killer. The whole reason we're giving up goals is on the penalty kill. You can't take out a penalty killer for a goon right now. Don't mess with the chemistry. Don't have him go around, running around, not playing the game, trying to hit people. And everyone sees, oh, he's going to defend everybody. No, he's not. Tom Wilson has never once cared who was on the other team when he throws hits. He does whatever he wants, whenever he wants. He's thrown bad hits against Ryan Reeves. He's taken bad hits from Ryan Reeves. That's probably the toughest guy in the league. Tom Wilson doesn't care who's on the ice. Don't play Ross Johnston so he can skate around for 6 minutes, do nothing, and probably give up a goal and take a bad penalty. Play the guy who kills penalties, and it can at least give you something.
Braden Holtby, on the one goal against Jordan Eberle, fellas, he looked pretty bad. And he whiffed on the goal. That goal by Jordan Eberle, by most, from what we've heard, should have never happened. And with that being said, with no Ilya Samsonov behind him, how much pressure is on Braden Holtby to not only complete this series going unharmed, uninjured, not having a bad game?
I wouldn't worry too much about the status of Holtby. And with regards to the Eberle goal, I wouldn't say that it wasn't one that Holtby shouldn't have let in. I mean, it started off a great play by Barzal, a great entry into the attacking zone by Barzal. And in the playoffs, and the two of you should know as well as I do, that it's never – I mean, unless you're Wenberg from Columbus, I mean, you're not no pretty goals when you playoff games. You know, you look at the 5 overtime game, it wasn't a pretty goal that won that game. You knew 5 overtimes in that it wasn't going to be a pretty goal that won that game. And it's the same thing with the Eberle goal. You throw pucks towards the net, you try to get guys in front of the goaltender to screen, and you try to find a hole. I don't think that was something where you should say, oh, that goal shouldn't have happened. It was set up by a good play. Eberle threw it to the net. They got guys in front. I don't think that there was anything wrong with it.
Is it tough, though, to say, Nick, that if there is a bad game, that the Capitals are in trouble?
Well, yeah, that's how the playoffs work. They shouldn't play bad
because you can't pull Holtby because there's no one with no playoff experience and no one there.
You got to roll with Holtby. I mean, the Caps can't freak out that much. He just won them a cup, 2 years ago? Like, come on, give the kid a little slack. If he gives up one bad goal, I think they're going to stand by him. It's fine. Like, I mean, I get they always want to win, but they can't be banking everything on this. And I think they've also kind of written off the fact that he's not coming back next year. So I don't think they care all that much about what's going on with Braden Holtby. He's given them what they want. This is all they have right now, so they don't have to think about even pulling him. There's no chance of it happening. They just got to hope he gets back to being the goalie that won them a Stanley Cup. But we've seen him have playoff struggles before. And to Ian's point, I think that Eberle goal also might have been tipped really high out because it kind of fluttered a little weird. Like when you watch the slow-mo replay of Holtby going for it, Joey's right, he whiffs on it, but I'm not sure if it was fluttering differently or something. It was a very odd-looking goal. They kind of mentioned it on the broadcast. They didn't analyze it too much, so I'm not reading too much into it. Holtby's a good goalie. One bad goal in a playoff game isn't that big a deal, and there's no chance of them pulling him, so at this point, it's a non-starter of a conversation for that team. Everyone around him has to play better. That's the real story.
8 o'clock on NBCSN. We will be off the air roughly about between 7:30 and 7:45 for that game. So, fellas, let's keep it moving. How about 5 overtimes for the Tampa Bay Lightning and Columbus Blue Jackets? Game 1 on Tuesday. That was one of the coolest games to watch. obviously I didn't watch the whole thing because I fell asleep around the third period and all the way to the second overtime and said, "Oh my goodness, this is bad." No, I'm kidding. I really didn't. But
what kind of hockey fan are you?
Sorry.
I said, what kind of hockey fan are you?
Listen, clearly not a good one because I'm mixing up points and goals here. Let's speaking of point, someone actually by the name of Braden Point scored the 5 overtime winner. Let's take a peek at what that goal looked like.
Lightning dressed. Luke Shen is an extra D in case he couldn't go. Here's a shot by Kucherov that's blocked. Kucherov again scuffs that hit Gavrikov. They score! It's fired by Braden Point. The shot hit Gavrikov, came back to.
So, with that being said, with a 5 overtime game, rather, it was almost 6 hours, and it was the second longest. It was the second longest in modern history. And obviously the first being the infamous Keith Primo game with the Philadelphia Flyers. That one, and also Pittsburgh, that one was pretty cool. You have to really commend Jonas Korpisalo, though. In this whole playoffs, he's had a 1.30 goals against and a 962 save percentage. And if I'm not mistaken, I think it was 85 saves on Tuesday afternoon / evening. I don't even know where to begin there because that is something that, and he stood tall the whole time. And these guys were fast, even in 5 OT.
So I think my favorite Korpisalo stat that I saw was tweeted by Dmitry Filipovich. And it's that I think he had a 950 save percentage against Toronto and played out of his mind and then leveled up to a 960 through 2 games of this series. Like, he couldn't have gotten better, and yet somehow he found a way to play even better. It just goes to show that Tampa had to throw everything at him to finally beat Columbus after Columbus sweeps them last year. What a win for Tampa to finally be able to get off the snide and say, thank goodness we got them. It took so much, but they finally were able to pull off a win there. But yeah, Korpisalo was amazing. Those were not cheap saves he was racking up. There were a lot of tense moments in that game throughout and in the early overtimes. But I got to disagree a little bit with Ian. That goal was kind of pretty. I mean, the play itself was junky and disjointed. That was a rocket top shelf by Point. It was a really nice snipe. He deserved to be able to celebrate and be happy about that one.
And also, too, with 5 overtimes, you're beginning to see mental mistakes as well. And they were talking about it all on the broadcast, too, is that at some point, these guys are playing 6 hours. We're going to start seeing mental breakdowns, physical breakdowns as well on the ice because, at some point these guys need, these guys are going like, Seth Jones had, I think, 58 minutes of ice time, something ridiculous that I think will probably live on for a very long time. I don't know when we'll see a 5 overtime game again, but that would be pretty cool. I hope it doesn't happen the next game. How about Pierre-Luc Dubois? The 3rd overall pick, fellas, in the 2016 NHL draft in Buffalo. He went right behind Austin Matthews and Patrick Laine. And he was considered a top prospect, obviously, in a draft that was really highly touted, number 1 and 2. And then eventually there was a slow dip, and Pierre-Luc Dubois was apparently that slow dip. But really, I think he's coming into his own, and he had a hat trick, I believe, on against Toronto.
Yep.
Really unbelievable play from him in this playoff series. And not only that, we are also seeing Columbus finally form into something. And this is something that they can build off of, as opposed to last year when Jarmo Kekalainen, the general manager, rolled the dice and traded away all of his draft picks from last year. That sounds a lot like what Garth Snow wanted to do many years ago with defensemen, I believe, Nick, many years ago.
Ryan Murray, he's still in Columbus. It was Ryan Murray they wanted to trade every draft pick for the year they drafted Griffin Reinhart.
Yeah. Absolutely unbelievable. But let's hear it, fellas. Pierre-Luc Dubois, what he's meant to this team, especially with no Artemi Panarin, Matt Duchene, Sergei Bobrovsky. The list goes on.
So my first thing about Pierre-Luc Dubois, you brought up that he was the third pick. He got no fanfare whatsoever in that draft because there were two big names ahead of him. And I think Columbus was even accused of reaching, that he wasn't even the consensus third best prospect. And now they brought up on the broadcast the other day that there's a legitimate gripe to be made that he's a better player than Laine right now. He's really ascended. It took him a little bit. He was a very young center iceman on a team that plays gritty, so you weren't going to see a lot of big numbers. It took him a while to earn his ranks, but he's turned into an excellent two-way center, really breaking out during this playoff. He was already having a good year, but not getting the attention. Now he's getting all the attention. He is a bona fide number one center, living up to the number three pedigree, and he's been absolutely excellent. He fills the perfect personality for this team. He plays with grit. He's got good size. He plays well on the boards. Really, really, really exceptional player.
I'll be the first to say, I mean, when the Blue Jackets in the offseason lost Panarin and Bobrovsky, and it just seemed like that Columbus wouldn't be able to recover from that. And there's a good reason why John Tortorella is a finalist for the Jack Adams. I mean, he certainly seems like a very deserving candidate of it. And as a Ranger fan, I mean, listen, there are certain things about watching Columbus through the playoffs so far where I've been tweeting out and saying, wow, I kind of missed that part of Torts' game plan. I mean, I don't miss his post-game interviews with the media, but I certainly miss certain parts of his game plan. And it's just been with these young superstars like Dubois and Wenberg and Bjorkstrand, and they're doing it with guys that you didn't expect coming into the season to be the type of team Columbus is. And Tortorella is just you think Torts' defense. I mean, Tortorella was always a defense-first guy, and you see guys like Seth Jones and Zach Werenski coming in and playing well, being that top defensive pairing for Columbus. And they're holding teams to 2-3 goals a game. They're not giving up 5-6 goals. They're really holding in strong, and these young guys are doing their part.
Yeah, they're really they've completely taken over what a lot of what we thought. And what we thought in the beginning of the season was that, okay, Columbus is going to finish dead last and New Jersey would finish ahead of them. Well, that didn't happen. We also thought that the Rangers would be picked ahead of them. Well, that didn't happen either. Or finish ahead of them. That did not happen either. This team also had gone through numerous players leaving, as Ian said, as Nick said. The aforementioned guys like Duchesne, Panarin, Bobrovsky, Jonas Korpisalo comes in. You have a plethora of youth players that are forced to come in and take over. The veteran leadership right now is not there because on long-term injured reserve, you have your assistant captain in also, obviously we haven't seen him in a long time, but Brandon Dubinsky at one point was a mainstay on that roster and also in that lineup in Torts' as a center. And it's amazing to see what Torts has done his entire staff to completely rebuild also that defense. Also, again, to see the emergence of Seth Jones and what he's been able to do since the trade with Ryan Johansson coming in from or going to Nashville from Columbus and having Seth Jones be the arriving player on there. But speaking of Nashville, though, I want to move over here because enough with Columbus because Columbus, they did, and actually, you know what? They came back and won 3-1 in game number 2, which was really phenomenal. But again, now that series is tied 1-1. I want to head over to the Montreal series, and the reason why is because they just won 5-0 against Philadelphia. But the more frightening thing here is that they beat Pittsburgh in 4. And that's something that a lot of people have said, well, could this be the end for Pittsburgh where they're going to slowly do another teardown similar to what they did last year? And every year that they lose in the playoffs, we hear, oh, well, is it for Pittsburgh whenever they don't win the cup? This time may be a little different because Marc-Andre Fleury's not there and Matt Murray is a little uncertain in terms of his future. Tristan Jarry as well. But the reason why I brought up that segue with Nashville is because what Montreal has done this year or this playoff year has been remarkable. And we also have seen the return of Mr. Shea Weber, who has been an absolute powerhouse. He's leading leading the defensemen with 3 goals. Leading all NHL defensemen with 3 goals. He's tied with fellow named Shea Theodore from the Vegas Golden Knights with 3 goals as well. Fellas, talk about Montreal and how we were not expecting, and in our confidence pool, or in my confidence pool, and also remember we were talking to DB about it as well, Pittsburgh was the easy 8 in that confidence pool.
Yeah, we all owe Montreal a humongous apology. We didn't just pick against them. We laughed them off. We barely gave them a game, if anybody did. Yeah. I completely thought they were dead meat, no chance, not competitive. And they came out and steamrolled Pittsburgh. They were the better team. There was no luck involved. They outplayed the Pittsburgh Penguins. They outworked them. They outskilled them. It was incredible. Pittsburgh won the one game where they looked like the better team. The rest of the series, it was Montreal, deservedly. And now they came out against Philly, who I thought is the best team in the Eastern Conference, the way they looked in the round robin. And they came out and beat them 5-0 today? Like, wow, Montreal is really showing me something. I picked Philly in 6 in this series, so I did give Montreal a puncher's chance. But, man, to have them come out and win a game 5-0 against a team that was rolling everyone over. And one game one, they were the better team, Philly, in game 1. So I kind of expected the series to keep going that way. But, man, Montreal, you can talk about Pierre-Luc Dubois bursting on the scene. How about Nick Suzuki from Montreal? Dennis Bernstein was laughing about how Nick Suzuki was their top center. Now the kid's playing really well. He's putting himself on the map. He's another young player that's ascending, the center they got from Vegas for Pax Pacioretty. So that's turning into a win-win trade because both of those guys are going to end up playing a big part in this postseason once Pacioretty gets going. But, man, Montreal's really showed me something. And, yeah, you're right. Shea Weber, he's finally back healthy. The whole Subban trade is so far in the rearview mirror now that we can't even think of those two as a comparison. Weber actually looks like the better player again after it looked like Subban was better for a couple of years. Very odd to see that bounce back and forth. But, yeah, Weber's been outstanding. He had a play today where the game was already 4-0, and they had an empty net, and he slid down and blocked a puck with like 10 minutes left. He's playing with grit. He's giving it everything. He's a leader for that team. So maybe Montreal's better than we think. I still don't think they have enough talent to make a serious run. But I think they're going to at least make Philly's life really hard the rest of the series because they've come to play. And you mentioned Pittsburgh, Joey. I don't want to ramble, but I can't see them making major changes based on flaming out after a 5-month break. I think this is one they're going to actually have to objectively look at and say, you know what? We can't put too much emphasis on what we just saw. I know they fired a lot of the coaching staff. Maybe that was something they already wanted to see coming. And we kind of already know they're going to have to pick one of their goalies because they don't have the money to sign both of them as restricted free agents. But I don't think major roster shakeups are coming outside of that. I think they understand this is a very talented team and that they just had a miscue and they're going to give them another shot.
Yeah, I was going to say Mark Recchi, Sergei Gonchar, 2 players from our childhood, not only are retired, but also behind the bench with Mike Sullivan, where there were talks where, rumors that Mike Sullivan might not come back. Now we're also beginning to see the rumor mill heat up with Pittsburgh potentially trading for Freddie Anderson from Toronto. Now that would be something that's something different for a whole another show. But Nick, another player that has to be commended as well, who has 3 goals and actually scored today. How about Jesperi Kotkaniemi? That one is really another amazing pick for Montreal and Mark Bergevin. And you know what? A lot of people have wanted his head on a mantle for a lot of years when they didn't sign John Tavares in the free agency frenzy a couple of years.
Not just they didn't sign him, they didn't get a meeting. That's what Montreal fans didn't even want to talk to them. He didn't care. That's what really pissed off that fan base. They was like, oh, we're not even a meeting-worthy team. What are you doing?
Yeah, and we've seen also with the with PK Subban being traded, and also with the pressure of wearing the C in Montreal, especially with the fan base, with the media, etc. But again, kudos to Kotkaniemi, kudos to Suzuki, and also, as Nick said, kudos to Shea Weber as well, because now what we thought at one point was a lopsided trade in favor of Nashville is slowly beginning to even out a little bit now that PK Subban is now in New Jersey and sitting home on his couch watching the Stanley Cup playoffs. Ian Schraier, your thoughts on Montreal and Pittsburgh, even though that series is in the rearview mirror?
And I mean, how about the return also of Tomas Tatar too from Montreal? He had a couple of goals today too. I mean, Montreal's playing with house money right now, and listen, I was on the show with you guys 2 weeks ago when Dennis Bernstein was on, and Nick's right. I mean, we completely dismissed Montreal as even being somewhat competitive in that series. It was, expected to be a runaway for Pittsburgh. Montreal wins in 4. So with respect to Pittsburgh, though, because I know we've hit a little more on Montreal, I'll kind of jump over to the Pittsburgh side here for a second, is usually when you do start cleaning house and you start letting a couple of those assistant coaches go, usually that also means that the head coach the following year is on the hot seat. It's crazy to think Mike Sullivan led the Penguins to back-to-back cups in 2016, 2017, and his name is being put out there as a potential candidate for free agency, so to speak. When it comes to the Penguins, it's got to be time for a rebuild at this point. I mean, Crosby, Letang, Malkin, Patrick Hornquist, they're all in their early, aging into their mid-30s now. At what point, we spoke at the top of the hour about how, what if Lafreniere ended up going to Pittsburgh and they're ushering out the Crosby era? Well, when is it time that we're going to start ushering out the Crosby era? And I was at Game 1 of the Islanders. I took my father-in-law, who's a diehard Islander fan, to Game 1 of the Islanders-Penguins playoff series last year. I was at the Coliseum. I watched the whole series, and the Islanders were by far the better team. And even being at the Coliseum for that game, you could just tell the Penguins aren't the same team anymore. They've gotten older. I think Crosby this year had a career low for points. It just seems like, to me, Mike Sullivan, to me, would be the right guy to lead that rebuild. He led them to back-to-back cups for a reason. But it really all depends what we're going to see here in 2021 from Pittsburgh before they make that decision.
Yeah, and also, it's very funny because you brought up how Mike Sullivan led the team to back-to-back cups against San Jose and against Nashville. I remember years ago when I thought, and people thought, that Dan Bylsma when he was on the hot seat, people would say, wow, that's absolutely crazy. But then eventually he just couldn't do it anymore. The team, I don't know if they gave up. I don't know if it was the personnel on the ice. He just couldn't. He wasn't able to get the correct equation. And then when he went to Buffalo, it was an absolute disaster too. So it seems it's not a rotating door for these head coaches in Pittsburgh. But you look at obviously the time just before Mike Sullivan, when it was Mike Johnston, and that was an experiment that was failed miserably. But again, to see exactly what you said, Ian, about Mark Recchi, Sergei Gonchar being 2 of 3 coaches or assistant coaches to be dismissed, Mike Sullivan has to begin to feel his butt getting a little warm for sure, because things might not be heading in the right direction. And I'm sure when we talk about this on Free Agency Frenzy, whenever free agency is sometime in the next couple of months, we'll be able to break down what the deal is with Pittsburgh. So again, kudos to Montreal, but again, today 5-0 against Philadelphia, the other team in Pennsylvania. Right now we are seeing Vancouver and St. Louis. Vancouver up 1-0 midway through the first period. St. Louis currently on a power play. If you are joining us here on the Eastern Observer, the Primetime Rundown, we really do appreciate you being with us for about another 40 minutes or so. The Islanders are on at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, MSG Plus, NBCSN, so we will be making sure that we are off well before 8 p.m. here tonight. Keeping it moving forward here in the hockey world also, I want to bring this up because this is the last thing in hockey that definitely needs to be spoken about. The Boston Bruins, fellas, they do not look like themselves. And at one point, the definite and just, you could bet on them, and they were the lowest odds in Vegas to win the Stanley Cup. And right now, they're not looking too good. They're 1-4-0 in their last 5. David Pastrnak is hurt. Nick's buddy Tuukka Rask is sporting a .904 save percentage. Jaro Halak in the one game that Rask was unfit to play, an .862 save percentage. And the only win that they got in the playoffs or in this bubble was against Carolina in the 2 overtime games. So, Ian, I want to start with you here. David Pastrnak obviously is a massive loss, but we're also seeing an average of 3 goals against allowed. on a team that at one point was number 1 in goals allowed, or in allowing goals for not as many goals as the rest. It's not good. And also their power play has struggled in the first 5 games, 12.5%. They are ranked 19 out of all 24 teams that have entered the bubble.
I don't want to say, let's all be shocked with the Bruins, but I think a lot of that comes from their play in the round robin tournament. Since the 2 games that they've played against Carolina, I would say that they're starting to look a little more like themselves. Yeah, I mean, losing Pastrnak right now is huge. I mean, he's obviously a key part of their offense and what they provide. But for the Bruins, like I said, don't count them out just yet. I mean, they were the Commissioner's Trophy recipients for a reason. They were the best team in the NHL coming into the playoffs, just by record and points alone. But also give a lot of credit, too, to the Carolina Hurricanes. And I'm not even saying that because they eliminated the Rangers. I'm saying that because that line of Aho and Teravainen and Svechnikov, and they're a young, hungry team. I would not be surprised come the Eastern Conference Final if we're seeing a Carolina-Philly East Final at this point. I mean, both teams are really playing at the top of their game right now. It's really impressive. Rask actually has looked a lot better the first 2 games of the Carolina series than he did in the first 3. So I think that's a little bit more of a credit to him. But I'm not ready to, they're not playing up to par as they did in the round robin tournament. They're looking a little better in the first 2 games against Carolina, but don't close the book on Boston just yet.
No, and listen, I'm definitely not closing the book, and no one wants to close the book for sure, because we know that they steamrolled Carolina last year in the Eastern Conference Final to get their way to lose in 7 and fall completely flat on their face in front of their home fans at the TD Garden, Game 7, when St. Louis would hoist the Stanley Cup in Boston. Nick, your thoughts on your boy Tuukka Rask?
All right, well, we'll start with the Bruins. You have to split everything up into 2 separate groups like Ian touched on. The round-robin Bruins are not these Bruins. Those round-robin Bruins didn't care. They flat out were flat every game. They were going through the motions. I think they were just focusing on their health. I don't think they care. Like, they just didn't look into it. Game 1 against Carolina, I think they were the better team. I mean, I really think they came out and they've looked a lot more like the Bruins. They're not all the way back. Carolina's a good team, like Ian said. They're going to give them a run, but they look like they completely flipped the switch for Game 1. I picked Carolina in 5 because they looked so much better in their series than the Bruins did. But the Bruins did flip a switch, and it made me a little afraid about that pick. I don't think this will be over in 5 games. This looks like a long series, but Rask hasn't looked that bad, maybe in the qualifying round, but those games didn't matter. He's played well in these 2 games, and that's what matters. And I also have to point out, the referees clearly want Boston to win, because I don't know what they're looking at on these reviews. They have no concept of what's going on. I mean, I don't think I've ever laughed as hard as I did at a referee than when that guy said, it's not a hand pass because the goalie had it covered. Good goal. If the goalie had it covered, then it's not a goal. How did you say that and not laugh at yourself for being an idiot? Like, that was baffling to me. I'm watching a replay, and everyone else is focused on a hand pass. I'm like, he covered it. It should have been blown dead. Like, it wasn't that like a super quick cover either. He had it, and then it was knocked out by a stick. You're not allowed to do that. Was I the only one watching that part of this game? Oh, my. Then they had another one in the second game that I feel like should have went Carolina's way. So I don't understand what's going on here. Why Carolina's not getting calls. They're a fun team, but this is going to be a long series. Boston looks almost all the way back. Pastrnak is a huge X factor, though. If he's out for the rest of the series, Carolina should win this, no doubt. But Boston's looked a lot better. They're going to be competitive. They're not going to go down without a fight. But Pasternak's an X factor because Svechnikov has turned into a star, too. He's another one of those young players drafted very highly that's breaking out. This is the theme of these playoffs. Guys like this are breaking out, and Svechnikov looks amazing. That guy has a rifle for a shot. You can't give him an inch of space because he takes it. The goal he had on Rask in Game 2 was ridiculous. He completely toasted him. So the Carolina Hurricanes are in it. Boston looks good. That's a fun series. I'm excited for it. And I think Ian actually took a page out of my bracket. I have Carolina playing Philly in the Eastern Conference Finals. I think both of them are the best teams in the East right now. So see how that happens.
I mean, can we also say, too, I mean, their deadline acquisition of Trocheck, and, he's not getting on the board all too much, but he's out there distributing. He's really doing the dirty play. He's really making the dirty plays right now, and he's a huge difference for this Hurricanes team right now.
Yeah, he's fit their system so perfectly. He didn't look great that last year in Florida. I understood it when they moved him, and I was curious to see how he'd come out in Carolina, but he completely meshed with Rod Brind'Amour's system. He looks like a completely reborn player on a good contract. We know at his best he's a great two-way center, and he's showing that right now. He's been a major factor in their success.
Yeah, some of the picks here we'll pull that up here, and we didn't really give any hope to Dallas. We didn't give any hope to the Capitals. We didn't give any hope to the Montreal Canadiens, and who knows, maybe that could be a little bit of a problem. We gave no hope to Colorado.
Arizona.
Yeah, it's say Arizona. The way they're looking right now is not too good. So,
I mean, Joey, can we also say from looking at that graphic when we were on the show 2 weeks ago, and we were kind of to a certain degree dismissing. I mean, I was on with Calgary, but how nice of a story the Flames have been so far.
Yeah, they really have. And you know what? It's funny because we bring this up here, and if you look on the bottom, actually, I will turn off this banner here. You look at all four of us here. I actually dismissed Calgary completely and had them losing in 4. But all four of us here had Winnipeg losing either in 4 or 5, which is really was not that smart. As we brought up earlier, Pittsburgh there, we all lost that. Toronto, yeah, and the Rangers, yeah. But really not that great choices from all of us there in terms of doing the picking.
Listen, hang on. I don't want to get lumped in there. You keep saying I'm writing them up. I had Winnipeg winning in 5 in a very close series, and then I have them beating Dallas in 7. I'm not giving these teams like a write-off. Those are very close series that I predicted. Let's not get carried away on making my picks get trashed. The Ranger one was wrong badly. That one I'm okay with owning up to. But come on. I picked Winnipeg in 5. That was a coin flip series. Yeah, come on. All right, I deserved it.
So there we go. So he deserved that. So fellas, we are now 1 minute past 7 p.m. here on the East Coast. We have 59 minutes until the game of the night begins, or so we say it is. As again, as we said earlier, 66.6% of us here are Islanders fans, so we are extremely pumped for tonight's game. Ladies and gentlemen, again, myself, Joey Jarzynka, Nick Partain, Ian Schraier with us from Adelphi University, Assistant Director of Athletic Communications out there right here on Long Island. So again, Ian, thank you so much for being with us and spending an hour and a half with us here on episode number 30. So let's keep it moving, fellas, and let's go quickly to MLS. And MLS here, this is for the two of you to banter about. And let's pull up here the MLS is Back tournament. And in the final, we had the Portland Timbers and the Orlando City SC. So Portland came out on top and won 2-1. So let's hear your thoughts, both of you, on a pretty productive and I think a pretty good experiment in a bubble, MLS's Back tournament.
I would love to see them do it again. It was really a great tournament. So many of these games were so well contested. We saw teams like Cincinnati. I mean, right now I'm just kind of recapping the tournament as a whole that we didn't expect to see in the round of 16. I mean, there was Cincinnati who lost to Portland, who ended up winning it all. In regards to the final, I mean, I'm not surprised that it was Portland. I mean, again, Orlando City, and we spoke about this a couple weeks ago. I mean, they were the doormat of Major League Soccer for the better part of 2 years, and credit to Orlando City for now really gaining some respect and turning it around. I'm really not focusing too much on Portland because I kind of expected them to win. I didn't expect it to be a 1-goal game, but with Orlando City, it's a great story. The play of Nani and as well as Dom Dwyer is finally becoming the player that they hoped they would have gotten when they got him from Sporting Kansas City. They came, I don't even remember what their record was, Orlando City, when they were entering the tournament, but especially at home in Orlando. So their last 2 seasons, like I said, a doormat for the rest of the league, and now you come in and now you reach the MLS's Back tournament final. It's a great story, especially for Orlando.
See, Ian went right to Orlando. I give him credit. All that analysis is right. It was crazy they made it that far. They're at home, quote unquote, in Orlando playing the game. It's really fun to see. They are a completely different team, it looks like, than those two teams somehow, even though the talent isn't all that different. But I'm going to talk about Portland. I thought that NYCFC and Philly were both more talented teams. I expected Portland to lose one of those games. I was very impressed with the fact that they came out, won both games, looked like the better team both times. Portland's just one of those teams that when they get into any kind of playoffs or bracket or things like that, they win games. I mean, I saw a crazy stat that either them or Seattle, I think, has been in the final or won like the last like 8 MLS Cups, something ridiculous like that. Like they're just a team that when push comes to shove, they play well. Their stars, Sebastian Blanco and Diego Valeri, did what they do best. They took over big games, came up big moments over and over again. And for the final, they did the same thing. I mean, this is a team that last year was really disappointing, and they've shown this year apparently that this is a different story. They're going to have a much better year. Jeremy Ebobisse, too, had a good tournament. Their center forward, the young American player. He was kind of iffy last year. He had the talent, but would he put it together? So Portland really went on a heck of a run, beat a lot of good teams to get to Orlando. So really, really, really entertaining series, though. No positive tests. They were the first men's league in general, I think, to come back in the United States. They did everything perfectly. The actual regular season even started yesterday, Joey. I don't know if you know, but Nashville and Dallas. Sorry, it took me a second. They were the two teams that before the tournament, so they got kicked out of it. They played their first regular season game since the tournament yesterday. Everything went fine there. Nashville got their first win as a franchise, so congrats to them. But it looks like they're going to be able to have a regular season, and hopefully they can keep having no positive tests because they were the guinea pig, and they came through. No positive tests. They've done everything great. Very happy that it's back. I'm excited. Hudson River Derby next week. Very excited for that as always. So we'll see how it goes.
Well,
I'm glad you mentioned that, Nick, with regards to the Nashville FC Dallas, because, I mean, these were two teams, as Nick mentioned, that were clearly affected by the COVID-19 pandemic and sent home to quarantine and isolate. And it's great just to see those two clubs, especially one of them who's a newcomer to Major League Soccer, to come out and play a regular season match. It was great for the sport.
Yeah, and on top of it too, fellas, with that being said, you know, not only great for the sport, but also great for sports in general too. As Nick said, you know, they were the guinea pigs. They were the ones that, you know, we were going to see if this bubble experiment worked. And it has worked so far because our favorite sport, hockey, is back, as we said. Basketball is back as well. Baseball is basically crawling to the finish line. Football, we don't know if it's going to get started. We'll get to college sports later on because that is both obviously where Ian and I we get our paychecks from there. We'll get to that a little bit later on. But fellas, NYCFC, you both are diehard fans. Hudson River Derby Sunday afternoon, just in a couple of days. Let's hear it. Let's hear your thoughts on a regular season beginning. And on top of it, too, they're not in Orlando, as you said. They are in Harrison, New Jersey at the home of the Red Bull.
They're not the only ones playing there. Apparently, Toronto is also going to play at Red Bull Arena for all their games. And then apparently Montreal might be joining them. So this could be like a mini bubble at Red Bull Arena where all these teams are playing. But NYCFC looked pretty good against Portland. So they had a little bit of their momentum from the Toronto win come with them. But Portland's a very good team, and they still beat them. So NYC still has things to figure out. The problem is they have a new coach, and they just haven't had enough time to implement his system, to understand things. They had the same kind of rough stretch at the beginning of the Dome Torrent era. So we got to give them some slack. They're a very talented team. If they put it all together, they're an absolute competitor for MLS Cup. But we have to see if Ronnie Delia, in this weird circumstance, is still his new system without messing everything up, without having too long of a lull, because this isn't going to be as long a season. He's got to make sure he gets things going quickly. So that's the big X factor, is can the coach get his footprint onto the team and get things going right off the bat and not have any missteps, because they can't afford it in a short season.
It's an early big game for both clubs. There's no doubt about it, coming back from the tournament. I mean, I certainly wish that in hindsight, that the Toronto FC match would count towards the regular season standings as well, but unfortunately the playoffs do not. Yeah, like Nick said, I mean, NYCFC lost to Portland, but the question is, can they refine that offensive surge that they had the last few matches that they were at the tournament in Orlando? It seemed like they finally, I mean, I wouldn't say that the match against Miami was all that great, but in the grand scheme of things, I mean, it looked like they really started to find that their footing the last few matches of the tournament, the Miami match, Toronto, obviously, and Portland. So can they really refine that offense that they had, and can they continue to play that 4-2-3-1, which they really started to succeed with in the Toronto contest? For the Red Bulls, the question is who's going to be the guy to step up that Bradley Wright Phillips is not there anymore? Nick and I discussed it 2 weeks ago, and it's a huge point to discuss again. Who's going to be the big striker now for the Red Bulls, especially now that BWP is gone? And we'll find out.
I think they signed somebody who was on like the second team of a Premier League team or somebody. I was talking to my friend about it. He's a big Red Bulls fan. He hears most things before I do. They also sold Alex Muyl, who is one of their reserve players, who's been basically a mainstay for the Red Bulls, a consistent sub every game, I feel like, that I've ever seen them play. He comes off the bench. He was sold to Nashville. So I'm very confused with what the Red Bulls strategy is right now. I mean, they really have to show their fan base they care by going out and buying a high-priced offensive player, because they've just not looked right at all. You lose to Cincinnati, that's embarrassing. Cincinnati was a bad team last year, so it's very uninspiring to see the moves they've made, to see how good Wright Phillips has looked. Robles has looked good for Miami. They let both of those guys go just because of money. So this team is kind of spiraling. They have a lot to prove this regular season, to prove to fans, no, we know what we're doing, but it really doesn't look like it. It's kind of terrifying. And I think they signed a midfielder too. So they're doing some things, but they're not spending big money. They're not getting big names, but sometimes this is what the Red Bulls do and they make it work, but it's scary for their fan base right now. They should be worried.
Yeah, a lot of good things coming up your way on Sunday. Hudson River Derby, the NYCFC taking on the New York Red Bull on Sunday. I think sometime in the afternoon, I believe.
4 o'clock, I think it is.
3 o'clock, 1 o'clock in that range, or 1-3 or something like that. Along those lines, but definitely something to watch on Sunday if you're a diehard soccer fan like Nick and Ian are here. So, fellas, let's keep it moving. There's a lot to talk about also in the world of football as well. And we're talking about professional football here because just yesterday we saw a couple of extensions that potentially could set the new tight end market in football. And now with the uncertainty of an NFL season, there could be a possibility that a salary cap could potentially dip. There could be a possibility of a flat salary cap similar to the National Hockey League. And yet we're seeing the two teams that faced off in the Super Bowl, in Super Bowl 54, just signed both of their top-tier tight ends to long-term extensions, 1 5-year and 1 4-year, George Kittle and Travis Kelce, respectively. George Kittle, 5 years, $75 million extension. $30 million of that was guaranteed at signing, and $40 million of it guaranteed for injury purposes. Also, Travis Kelce, 4 years, $57.25 million extension. So the numbers are mind-boggling, literally mind-boggling. Your eyes could pop out of your head by looking at this, because this is something that you see, and George Kittle, being 26 years old, has bursted onto the scene, and Travis Kelce has been doing it for however long. And he deserves, I think, every penny that he gets. And I love the 4-year deal because he is 30 years old, and football players, once they hit 30, they begin to decline. Talk about the market now that these guys have set up for the likes of Zach Ertz, for moving forward for a lot of these, or for a lot of the second tier players, or the 1A tier, if you will.
You have to remember, Joey, I'm going to counter your point here a little bit with regards to setting the market for Zach Ertz. Zach Ertz still isn't an unrestricted free agent for 2 more years. So by the time he's getting paid, he's turning 31, 32. And I'm not saying that's going to take away from Zach Ertz's production. I'm sure we all saw, and I'm sorry to say, Joey, you as an Eagles fan, I'm sure you were disappointed by the performance of Zach Ertz this past season. Certainly not the same numbers that he had produced the year prior. But he's going to be 31, 32. I mean, do you know who the rest of the top 5 in terms of the highest paid tight ends right now in the NFL are after Kittle and Kelce? It's Hunter Henry, Austin Hooper, and Kyle Rudolph. Yeah. It's incredible. Hunter Henry and Austin Hooper, and Austin Hooper just got signed by the Browns for $10.5 million. I mean, is Hooper a good tight end? I mean, I wouldn't put him in the range of $10 to $12 million a year. I mean, he's a trustworthy tight end. He's a good goal line threat. But $10 million for Austin Hooper is it just shows, really, with respect to the salary cap. Every year, that's why we always say there's always a new highest paid wide receiver, a new highest paid tight end, a new highest paid running back, because every year the salary cap goes up, and so someone becomes the next highest paid player at their position. I'm all for setting a cap or for just at least lowering it a little bit and even the playing field a little bit. I don't think there are players in the league right now that should be making the money they should. Austin Hooper, I mean, Hunter Henry is still recovering from a torn ACL. He's still not the same player right now that he was 4 years ago. Kyle Rudolph, who's making close to $10 million, is a trustworthy run-blocking tight end who's also a goal line threat. But there's Kittle and Kelsey got paid the way they should. But let's look at it from the rest of the market. Ertz is going to turn 31, 32 years old by the time he's an unrestricted free agent. After that, who's left? Jared Cook? I mean, you've got guys that are right now all a little bit past their prime. So we'll see. Before we get a little too far ahead of ourselves, Joey, we'll see where that market really stands in a couple of years.
Nick Partain.
So I agree with Ian. I don't think anybody after these guys is resetting the market. Kittle smashed it. I'm pretty sure the previous highest tight end number was like 11 or 12. So we knew that Kittle was going to break it, but he really broke the bank. And the big reason I'm going to tell Ian and why we're seeing a lot of tight ends get a lot more money is because they're arguing that they're closer to wide receivers than they are to tight ends. A lot of these guys split out wide so often that they have the argument that they are better off being paid like a second-tier wide receiver than a first-tier tight end. That's why Kelsey and Kittle were able to get so much money. They're now getting almost wide receiver type of money because of how good they are receiving. And then Kittle's an outstanding blocker. Kelsey's not terrible, but that's why the numbers keep going up. And a guy like Hooper is that kind of guy who splits out wide so often that you can't even consider him a tight end because he's out wide so often. And this is something Jimmy Graham started a while ago where he brought that argument out, and he's the one who really started getting tight ends paid more. But Ertz is definitely not the class of tight end those two guys are. He has 2 years left on his deal. I don't see him getting that kind of money. I think for Kelsey's sake, something we have to talk about is that he kind of did the Mahomes thing. He's not getting a ton of cash up front. So that's what helps the Chiefs make this kind of extension in a pandemic era. He's giving the team cap relief early on to be able to keep this core together and be able to go on more runs. It's amazing how their GM has been able to get Mahomes, Kelsey, and Chris Jones all signed to decent numbers and keep the initial cash down. A lot of guys, when they get these huge contracts, want a ton of the money up front because it makes it more valuable to them, and they get more money right off the bat. They can invest it, do whatever they want with it. These guys all took the selfless route. They're getting huge contract numbers, but they're spreading the money out better so that the Chiefs themselves can pay everybody and keep this thing going. It's really admirable to see guys, superstars on a franchise, do that. Even after winning the Super Bowl, like you already won one. It's more understandable if you're trying to gun for that first one and you're going for it. A lot of times when guys win, they just focus on the money after that. These guys want to win a lot. They want to keep going. They want to own the league for a while. So good for the Chiefs to be able to get those deals done. Good for Kittle and Kelsey to really reset the market. They deserve every penny they got. They're amazing players, consistent every year. They play all facets of being a tight end. Really, really fun to watch. But yeah, Ertz isn't going to get that kind of money, Joe. Don't bring your Eagles into this. He's not the same player.
I can't see any other person or tight end making that type of money for a few years unless we continue to see possibly the only one that I could think of would be a Darren Waller on Las Vegas, the Raiders. And he fell out towards the end of the season last year a little bit, but boy, not only did he make a stand, he looked amazing on Hard Knocks when we had a first-hand look at him, but also he followed up with that in the regular season amidst all of the Antonio Brown stuff, amidst the final year in Oakland. How about the last game in Oakland where, we saw a whole debacle inside the Coliseum where it was just one of the most embarrassing games in Raiders history. And that's how you leave Oakland, not on a good note. But I'd love to see Darren Waller eventually get paid. We look at some of the numbers here. George Kittle ranks 6th in the NFL with 2,430 receiving yards. He's 11th with 173 receptions, and he's 2nd in yards after catch with 1,464 yards after catch in the last 2 seasons. In the last 3 years, Travis Kelce, 283 receptions, 23 touchdowns, 3,603 yards. Yeah, you're not wrong in terms of Zach Ertz, and really that would be the other part. Do you believe that he would get money elsewhere? I know with the Eagles, the cap situation is an absolute disaster. I think they're over $50 million next year. which, is just a big brain buster. But would he receive any other money or any, let's call it $9 to $10 million on the open market?
Well, we're trying to predict 2 years out, if you mean as an unrestricted free agent, so that's hard to discern. He's also had a lot of health problems lately. I think he was the guy who played better with Nick Foles. I know he either played better with Foles or he played better with Wentz. I don't know. One of them liked Jeffrey better. One of them liked Ertz better. So he's the kind of guy that maybe doesn't mesh with everybody as a receiver. We don't know. We do know that the Eagles have Dallas Goedert waiting in the wings, so that's another reason they're probably not going to extend Ertz, because they have a tight end that's building a resume behind him as a really good player. So, but as eventually when he hits free agency, it's kind of too far to tell. We got to see what the rest of his 2 years with Philly looks like. So we'll see when that comes. But if he's still playing at this level, he'll probably get a good 12 or 13 million. He's a really good receiving tight end, but he's got to keep it up.
Moving forward here with Major League Baseball, the San Diego Padres, guys, they are a team to watch. And kudos to AJ Preller, because what he's done with this team so far is pretty good. And again, their record does not show for it, but to some, they are must-watch baseball. Why? Because of a man named Fernando Tatis Jr., 8 home runs, 711 slugging percentage, which leads the National League. He's also the first player in history with 30 home runs, 20 steals in his first 100 games. And also, as a team, they are leading in home runs with 30, and their team slugging percentage 464. And they also lead Major League Baseball in team OPS 788. Am I the only one watching the Padres?
No.
Sorry, you can go, Ian.
No, that's all right. Actually, no, because when we spoke 2 weeks ago, Joey, and I'm not trying to take credit and push on myself here, but I was the one that, when you had spoken to us about the Cincinnati Reds, I said, the team we really should be focusing on right now is the San Diego Padres. Granted, we were all, and I see Nick nodding his head because he remembers that. So I appreciate that. But we were only 6-7 games in at that point. I mean, they started off the year 6-2. They're 5-7 since. To the credit of their opposition, I guess, if you want to say that, their first 8 games were against teams like underachieving teams like Arizona. I would say Arizona is probably one of the most underachieving teams. If I was a betting man, I would say I would have gone to Vegas and bet the under all the way on Arizona this year. I really didn't like the way they looked. San Francisco, there really wasn't too much expected since they played teams like the Dodgers and the Rockies, who are leading the National League West. But the thick of the San Diego lineup is producing. Tatis, obviously, at the headline of it. Especially, I mean, if he stays healthy last year, he's probably the National League Rookie of the Year over Alonso. Machado's giving you power, but right now he's only hitting 224, but he's still giving you the home run and RBI numbers. Will Myers has been a little bit of a sensation, finally producing. And then for, like you said, Joey, San Diego is, they're top 10 in Major League Baseball, top 5 in the National League alone in runs scored, home runs, and RBIs. So it's their hitting, but their pitching is also helping a lot too. I mean, I didn't buy the Chris Paddock hype last year. I'm still not buying it. He gave up, I think it was 6 runs for the Dodgers last night. His ERA is hovering around 5. But guys like Lamet, Richards, I thought the Zach Davies signing was a very underrated signing. The guy was a number 4 starter in Milwaukee, won 10 games. I think he could have won more, actually. I think if the bullpen didn't blow a couple of games for him. So that rotation, Garrett Richards is even refining his pre-Tommy John form at 32. So they're getting some help also from their pitching. And I know Lamet was starting today against Arizona. So you're not wrong, Joey. They are, without question, a team to watch. And right now they're 11-9. They're 3rd in the NL West, and would be, if the postseason started today, would be the first wildcard team.
That's absolutely crazy to see that. And just to throw a couple of numbers here at you guys, Chris Paddock, where we thought, or he actually is technically on the depth chart, the number 1 starter, 4.91 ERA, and he has a lot of problems giving up the long ball. 7 home runs, 14 earned runs, 22 strikeouts, and he has a 2-2 win-loss record. Nick, your thoughts on San Diego and if they are must-watch baseball?
I give Ian credit for telling us we should be watching them. They're definitely entertaining. Tatis is the hottest player in baseball right now. He's a budding superstar if he's not a superstar already. You mentioned the numbers they can clearly hit, but you told on yourself. They're 11-9. Why do I want to watch an 11-9 baseball team? They're mediocre. If their pitching doesn't get it together, their bullpen has been horrific. Even big time names like Kirby Yates has been bad. They need to get their pitching and their bullpen fixed, or they're just going to be one of those high-scoring teams that has fun out there but doesn't really win. So for now, they're in a wild card spot, like you said. So if they can hover here, at least they're a playoff team. But if they don't get their pitching right, they're not going anywhere this year. Fun to watch because of the hitting, but the pitching is just a mess. They got to get that fixed, especially playing in San Diego. It's easier to pitch there. You got to be kidding me, guys. Come on, that's your hallmark.
It's, I mean, credit. I mean, you hit the nose, Nick, on Yates, but what's been really impressive has been Pomeranz. I mean, 31, 32 years old. I mean, he hasn't given up a run, I think, in 9 appearances. It's unbelievable. The Red Sox wish they had him back at this point. It's unbelievable to see what Pomeranz is doing right now to fill in the hole that Kirby Yates can't fill right now.
Beyond unbelievable. I'm sorry, Nick, to interrupt you. That you said that, Ian, because a lot of people had given AJ Preller a lot of grief for re-signing Pomeranz to a massive deal, and it was a little suspect. But now you look at the numbers: 7 1/3 innings of relief in his last 7 1/3 innings of relief. He has 10 strikeouts. Craig Stammen really has not been the answer. Kirby Yates has not been the answer. But Drew Pomeranz, who was at one point a starter in Boston, and then who was also at one point a starter in San Diego, has really found himself again towards the latter part of his career, as like a setup guy for the closer Kirby Yates. And again, I have to agree with Nick there is, 11-9, it's tough. Garrett Richards, 1-1, 3.74 ERA. Again, having some trouble giving up those runs, 9 earned, 19 strikeouts, 2 of those home runs. Zach Davies looks like your best pitcher right now, fellas.
Well, it's really Lamet that's your best pitcher. I think he's 2-0 with an ERA under 2. And I mean, Garrett Richards right now is your 4 starter. So if you're getting an ERA of 3.47 out of your 4 starter, I'd say you're doing pretty good. Because from there, you're really playing with house money when you come to your 4 and your 5 starters. But the key for San Diego, and I'm not saying that they won't be able to compete with the Colorados or the Dodgers, but they've got to take advantage of the parts of their schedule where they need to beat the teams that they're supposed to beat. 10 of their next 12 games are against Arizona, Texas, and Seattle. So if the Padres are really the team that they can be, and if they're not going to be a first or a second best team in the division, and you really want to hold strong on that number 3 spot in your division to be a wild card, 9-3, 8-4, there's no reason that against those teams you shouldn't be performing.
Yeah, it almost reminds me of last year when the Nationals they made it all the way to the World Series. They won the World Series, but it was all because of their starting pitching. Because their hitting came through, but obviously it was the pitching, and their bullpen was beyond awful. And at one point, we did hear also, or we read actually, or I read. That the Padres had the best bullpen in baseball, and I started laughing when I was doing my research here, and I'm saying to myself, how is that possible? But what I do believe, though, is that by looking at some of the players that A.J. Preller shipped out of town, Travis Jankowski, Franchi Cordero, Hunter Renfroe, Franmil Reyes, Nick Martini, Manuel Margot, and brought in Trent Grisham, who we know was a part of that Juan Soto issue last year in the NL wildcard game, where he actually he was the one that missed that ball out in right field, I believe. So now you have him, I believe, in center field. Tommy Pham in left, Will Myers in right, because you can't get rid of that massive contract. And Trent Grisham right now at one point where, you could laugh at A.J. Preller and the Padres saying, okay, well, you remember that guy, what he did? Why would you want him playing in center field? But right now, he might be a sleeper for this team in the NL West. And, hey, listen, this team really, if they could fix their pitching, this team could be pretty good to watch.
Yeah, I love the mentioning of some of these journeyman guys that they turned around. Garrett Richards, who has had so many injury problems with the Angels, but he's pitched kind of well here and there. If you can keep him healthy and have him pitching this well, that's a score. Pilfering Zach Davies, when he's been an underrated pitcher, I feel like for a while now, he's like one of those consistently good guys that doesn't pop, so nobody really knows he's pitching well. He's always pitching well enough, so to get him is a score, have him pitch well. And I love that you mentioned Pomerantz, because there's some smart fantasy baseball general managers out there who may have added him early on. Serious benefits from him as his closer. That's kind of thing that I like to see out there. But yeah, if they can get Kirby Yates and Craig Stammen and some of their other guys going in the bullpen, that bullpen becomes dangerous. They do have some good arms out there. It's just the guys aren't performing. And then, like you said, Paddock has talent. If he gets himself turned around, the depth pitchers they have, Lamet, Richards, Davies, are all pitching well. So there are ways to get them to be a competitive team, but you can say that about a lot of teams in baseball. If you fix your weaknesses, you're going to be better. So we'll see. It's just there are guys with good track records that aren't playing well. That's what makes it more positive for San Diego, that you should expect some of those guys to turn it around.
Yeah. Let's head into college sports because we know that things right now are going a little south, if you will, for the Pac-12, for the Big Ten. Both football seasons have been canceled or postponed or whatever we want to call it. It's tough to see. It's tough to hear. It's almost inevitable. We knew it was going to happen. And, the Big East Conference was the latest one to postpone all fall sports with the potential of restarting in spring of 2021. It's tough to see. Ian Schraier, you and I are both in the college sports field, but we knew that. I think most of us knew that this was bound to happen, and it's a difficult sight to see.
Yeah, working at Adelphi, I've had a few stops along the way, but obviously Adelphi is where I am now, and you just really feel for the student athletes because you didn't have an answer for them for so long. I think we all had attitudes of cautious pessimism. We wanted to be optimistic. It was very hard to be. Plans were put in place for reopening. Campuses are opening. A lot of campuses are having students back on their campuses as early as now to get them in the dorm buildings, to have them isolate and quarantine for 2 weeks. This way they're not infected. So schools are taking the right approach. But from the athletics landscape, yeah, it's unfortunate. I love the idea that it seems like Division II, Division III, Division I is going to do everything it can to try to play in the spring. I know the NCAA came down with the hammer and announced that all fall championships, Division I, II, and III, are going to be canceled. Not postponed, but canceled, which is just really unfortunate. The only sport that it doesn't affect to a certain degree is women's tennis, because they are a spring championship sport. So in theory, you can move the women's tennis season to spring, crown a champion in the conference, and still send a team to the NCAA tournament. And then the other piece of it is the almighty dollar of the football bowl subdivision, Division I FBS. And like I said, it comes down to the almighty dollar. You have the Big 12 saying we're going to play, and we'll see how that goes. We'll see how the numbers come back with regards to exposure. Look, Big 12 has a deal with ESPN. Texas has their own network. So there's a lot of money. But in the end, I think I deleted my tweet, but I had tweeted at Adam Ledyard from the NFL draft analyst, and he had said that how difficult his job was going to become, and how unfortunate, and why are we not playing football? And I've really tried to stay docile during that whole process. But to me, the guys that get drafted account for 1% of the entire landscape of programs of college football, Division I, Division II, Division III. In the end, it's about the safety of the student athletes and running them out there because, all these fans are like, the NBA was able to do it. The NFL was able to do it. The NHL was able to do it. Major League Baseball is able to do it. Why can't college sports? Because these guys are student athletes. Let me reiterate, student athletes. They get paid to go to school. whether they decide to leave after a year and declare for the draft. They're student athletes. These are not professional athletes. These are not professional contracts. These are NOIs that they sign, national letters of intent, to go to school, to go to class, and to play a sport there. And in the end, most of these conferences, the NCAA, are getting it right. There are some that still obviously have question marks, but we'll see where we stand in a couple more weeks.
It's unfortunate to see a lot of this happen. I don't even know where to go with it. Nick, your thoughts from the outsider perspective.
I really want to sincerely say I feel bad for everyone that's losing jobs and isn't getting paid. I know you guys have it tough right now because things aren't going on, and you guys have had a great attitude about it and supporting the athletes in every way you can, and that's really, really, really good to see. But it's so much harder for college, and Ian hit the nail on the head. I was chomping at the bit to make that exact point. These are student athletes. These are students. You can take college classes online. You should not be putting your life at risk to go back to your campus if you're not playing D1 football, like D1, like serious draft type players. Nobody else, I should not understand why anyone wants to go back right now. Take classes online. It's the easiest way to do it. I don't understand. And then you're right, like these analysts and all these snooty people sitting home, I want my college football. Well, they're tough. Don't put kids at risk because you want to watch college football. That's ridiculous. All the other sports are on right now. Watch something else. Let these kids be safe. You're right. Perfectly said. 1% of them end up in the NFL. You know the names of 1% of these guys when they're playing in their games. Stop acting like you care so much about them. You don't. You want your own stupid enjoyment. Let the kids be safe. Let them take their classes from home. And they can all come back next year and be athletes again, right? Shouldn't they play it out that way? The NCAA could very easily grant everyone another year of eligibility, get everything under control, cancel everything is the better for the athletes. I don't know if it's logistically right. I don't want to overstep my knowledge here, but like theoretically for the athletes' sake, they can all come back next year, play sports then, train at home, stay in shape. Please be safe. We want this virus to end so that everything can run normally as soon as possible. The more you try and force into starting, the longer you're going to stretch this out for. These other conglomerates had enough money as a whole to make everything work, to bubble, to have their athletes only be athletes. There's too much going on with colleges and all kinds of sports. There's too many athletes on campus at once for all of them to play at the same time. It's different in the NBA bubble where every team has like 15 players. It's only 30 teams. The NCAA has way more kids than that, way more students, way more athletes. It's way too much to just spring together. Maybe there is a pathway to getting certain sports playing and making this work, but it's really complicated. People need to be patient and make sure they're doing it right for the safety of everybody involved. Because it's way bigger than just sports. It's safety, and they have to care about the safety of these athletes.
Yeah, Phil, I don't mean to rush everybody because that would obviously, this is a topic that we could continue to go on and on about, but we do want to just bring this up. We do have about 9 minutes left because we'll go to 7:45. That's, that was the latest that we did say we would go. Again, for those that are still sticking around with us here, we do appreciate it. And again, Islanders, Capitals, 8 p.m., NBCSN, MSG Plus, MSG Go, all of the above. Let's finish off with the next few topics here. Ian, this actually has to do with us as well because we are in the communications field. NBC Sports Philadelphia and all regional networks will be dismissing sideline, ringside, certain reporters there. Because we both work in the industry, how difficult is it to see? And also, is NBC or Comcast as a whole making the mistake by relieving the duties of sideline presence and ringside presence?
That's a tough question, Joey. It really is. I mean, and I'm not trying to say that sideline reporters don't do great work because they do. But when it comes right down to it, I consider the sideline reporter to be a little bit of a luxury. I mean, I'm not trying to bash on the Pierre Maguires of the world and the Steve Gilds and everybody that goes out there and works hard to do their job. I mean, listen, they get the insider information, especially in a sport like hockey where you want somebody inside the glass. And right now they're actually inside glass so that nothing's being passed around. But, again, I find it to be a little bit of a luxury. You need your play-by-play announcer. You need your color analyst. That's how, aside from professional sports and really, as Nick referred to, the big D1 college sports, that's how we all do it. It's the job of the play-by-play announcer and the color analyst to do their research, to really fill up their charts. It's really their job to do the handiwork. The sideline reporter shouldn't be doing it for them. And if the play-by-play announcer and the color analyst are doing their job, then the broadcast is going to run great. Is it great to have a sideline reporter as well? There's no question about it. Interviews, additional analysis, inside stories, things like that are great. But for right now, for the safety and the well-being of those sideline reporters, I don't think that was the wrong move.
Okay, well, Nick, your thought on that as the viewer.
I think Ian hit the nail on the head. The word luxury is perfect to describe them. They do great work. It's awesome having somebody who can write on the spot, listen in on the benches, and ask coaches questions without having to have full interviews that are on broadcast, to be able to give those little quips of information that are so cool to hear, knowing that they're right on top of it. But you're right, they're a luxury. The more we can do to keep people safe is probably for the better. Hopefully a lot of those guys have the money to be able to be okay without working and things like that, or find other roles for them, because they're all really good at what they do. It's just, you're right, it's tough to have them out there, put them at risk when you're right, they're a luxury, they're not necessary. Have your 2 announcers announcing from wherever it is they may be. They do a great job of getting you the game okay. We don't need sideline reporters. Keep people safe, make this as good a process for everyone as possible.
Well, I don't think that this is, I believe that this is a financial move. I don't believe that this is a move for COVID. I believe that this is a financial move that we most likely will not see. I believe I did read the article where the Flyers will not be having a ringside reporter ever again, which is completely wild. But to Ian's point, because, I have to agree, it really is a luxury. But again, I believe that this is a financial thing from what I read. CBS Sports did not have, when it was Jim Nantz and Phil Simms for many years, did not have Tracy Wolfson until just a few years ago. They did not have Melanie Collins with Greg Gumbel and Dan Fouts. Okay, those or Trent Green. Excuse me. I'm showing my age there. Or Spiro Ditas with Evan Washburn. All of those guys
with Aaron Andrews, with Buck and Aiken, same thing. Yeah, right,
exactly. Yeah, but what we've seen, and we've seen on the bigger stage. Fox Sports obviously has had the sideline people dating back for as long as I can remember. But the only one that I think of now is CBS, because at one point I always remembered, I want to watch Fox because, and it didn't matter if the game, I guess, was just my childhood mentality of, I want to listen to some of these reporters that are down on the field or down on the sideline, and we get to hear, everything going on because the mic is hot. And it was the coolest thing. But again, it's definitely unfortunate for these folks that not only wanted to be sideline reporters growing up, but that's really all they know. And now they might have to go smaller to eventually get higher.
It's a few things, Joey. It's going back to the point of what I said about them being a luxury. A lot of these companies, I'm not saying CBS Sports is trying to reel in money, but if there are areas where you can take care of someone's well-being and unfortunately cut a position to also save money. You got to imagine these Tracy Wolfsons, the Aaron Andrews. Aaron Andrews is going to make money elsewhere, so will Tracy Wolfson. But they've got to be spending a decent amount of money on these people. And if there's areas to cut, that's the area they're going to cut. Like I said, it's a luxury position. Is it great to have it? Yes, but it's a luxury position. It's an area that when you're planning out your plan A for where we're going to make budget cuts, I'm sure sideline reporters got to be close to the top of that list.
Yeah, well, we know now what Adelphi is not having this year, if there are any sports, because Ian Schraier has basically said it there. So, fellas, with the final 3 minutes to go here, let's look back at what we were saying here. Kudos to the Toronto Blue Jays staff because they did a really phenomenal job getting, I believe it's called Salin Field in Buffalo. Right off the New York State Thruway, that looks really, really not bad. And the reason why I bring that up is because, they haven't had a home. There is no home for them. Rogers Center is off limits. Crossing the border is off limits. So their temporary home is at the home of the Buffalo Bison in Buffalo, New York. So now it looks pretty good. And what are your thoughts on what they had to do to, get this ready to go for, I don't know, the end of the season? We're almost there.
I'd argue this field is more aesthetically pleasing than the Rogers Center. I never loved their stadium. I always thought it was a weird view. I didn't like the turf in there. The home run areas are all tiered and disjointed and weird. There's like big random panels and spots. I never really liked Rogers Center. This looks more like a ballpark. It's outdoors. It's grass. It's nice. I love what they did with it. I think the Buffalo Blue Jays should stay. Just leave Toronto. Who cares? This is better. And you got to comment. Their powder blue unis have been on point beautiful lately. They are a really nice look. I don't love the ones that have like the red in them like the Phillies ones. I don't love red with the powder blue. Toronto does it great with the light blue with a little dark blue. Mint. Beautiful.
Yeah, I mean, kudos to the Blue Jays staff for getting that stadium together. I know that's not where the Blue Jays want to be right now. It's not home for them. I know it certainly has already given up its fair share of runs. I forgot who they played the other night. I think there was like at least in the seventh inning, there were like a combined 19 runs between the two teams. So it seems like the Jays are going to be playing on a little bit of a launching pad, which I guess is good for guys like Vlad Guerrero. But yeah, I mean, I was thrilled, Nick, to your point, when the Blue Jays finally went back to the jerseys of the Joe Carter days, and that's what I associate to the Toronto Blue Jays. Not I'm sorry to use the word, but not the trash that they ran out there with Roy Halladay, and not the those blue and red jerseys they ran out there when Clemens was in Toronto. I mean, these are the Jays. These are the Toronto Blue Jays. These are the jerseys you associate with the Toronto Blue Jays. The white at home with the blue with the outlining. It's just like they said. The powder blues look great, but just the branding of it all, just to bring it back to the time when they won those World Series, looks spot on for sure.
Yeah, I was gonna say rest in peace, Doc Halladay. But you look back to the colors and to the time when they had the I think 2006, 2007 in their dark days. Those uniforms are long gone. We now see as we said, going back to the 90s era, which really. I don't know. It almost seems like we're bringing a lot of stuff back from the 90s. It's pretty cool stuff to see, especially with Toronto in their good days, if you will.
Remember the hat that they used to wear back when Clemens was there? It was a blue hat with a big red T and the Blue Jay carrying a baseball bat.
Yeah.
I mean, if you haven't seen it, Google it. It's hilarious.
It's really unbelievable to see the evolution of what they've done. And also, again, kudos to the entire staff for making sure that this is their home. And also with the extended playoffs as well, or the expanded playoffs, we might see Toronto in there. It's no sure thing, but it's also something that is not dead in the water yet. So there's a lot of time left, and I don't know Toronto's record right now, but we'll see. And especially as Ian said, it is a launch pad in there. It is a minor league baseball stadium. So these guys, it could be like a home run derby for guys like Vlad Guerrero Jr. So one quick thing, Islanders Caps, it is at 8:00. Who do you have as a winner tonight? Ian Schraier.
I'm going to say the Islanders are going to take a 2-0 lead. I love the momentum that they're playing with right now. I think that's going to carry over into game 2. I just think the Islanders have to play mistake-free hockey, and I think they're going to be up 2-0 at the end of the night.
Nick Partain, your thoughts?
No Backstrom. Caps are going to be distracted, possibly trying to get back at Lee for reasons I still don't understand. Islanders are focused. They're locked in. Roll 4 lines. Better coach. I think the Islanders are going to take this one.
Teacher versus student, part 2 in the playoffs. Barry Trotz obviously has gotten the demons of winning a Stanley Cup out just a couple of years ago. We know that he couldn't get it done in Nashville. He'd make it to the playoffs almost every year. Same thing with Washington, but he just could not get to the Cup final. He did 2 years ago. I think in this game tonight, I think we're going to see the Capitals come out on top here because of the stat that I had pointed out about Lars Eller. We've seen a different team multiple times, and I think that it's not so much because the Islanders are ready to roll all 4 lines. I think that not only are the Caps going to be distracted, they are. I think we're going to see a rise in play from TJ Oshie, also from Ovechkin, who we have not seen anything from in the previous however many games. Ladies and gentlemen, it has been fun. Episode number 30 right here on StreamYard, on the Eastern Observer, Periscope, Facebook, Twitter, wherever you are watching from. For Ian Schraier, Nick Partain, and for all of us at the Blackjack Media Group, I'm Joey Jarzynka. Let's go Islanders, and also let's go hockey. We'll see you all next week. Again, I'm Joey Jarzynka. We'll see you next time.